So, what book of the Bible does Faber read to Montag after he leaves?
Job.
Look up the jaw.
Book of Job.
Book of Job. It does read like Job. Don't worry, it does. But it is Job is the name of it. Yes. Can anyone tell me why? Can anyone think why? I ask that because we are still in the Bible Belt, and many people do still go to church, and so I'm curious if you do know the significance of that book. Well, have you ever studied Job? No? Well, there's a lot of books in the Bible. Most churches stick towards the New Testament for obvious reasons, but it is important to know your Old Testament too, if you are a Christian especially. Well, in the book of Job, I'm pointing to my Bible for some reason. In the book of Job, it's about this man named Job, all right? And he is a man of God, so much in the fact that he has been blessed by God repeatedly. And the devil one day goes, I bet I can taint him. I bet I can make him hate you and curse you. And God goes, okay, go ahead and give it a shot. You can do anything you want to him, but you can't kill him. You can't affect his health or anything like that. You can do anything else you want to him, though. So, throughout the story, about the first 5 or 6 chapters or so, in about 1 week's time, Job's life is completely flipped around. He went from being blessed by God with a massive family, wealth beyond comparison in the region, many houses, much cattle, and things like that. And instead, he has lost all of his farms, all of his family, every single child of his is dead. His wife hates him and wishes him to curse God and die. And his friends tell him that he should curse God and die as well. His life flips completely. And he still refuses. Well, and then so the devil comes back next to God and says, well, he's only staying strong for you because his health is fine. That's it. You've hurt his things, but you haven't hurt him yet. So God goes, okay, you can do whatever you want to him if you want to, whatever you want. With his health, you just can't kill him. That's it. So, to make things worse, on top of him being completely destitute, having no money, all his family's dead, his wife thinks that he is stupid, all of a sudden now his health starts getting affected. He starts gaining these giant boils on his flesh. Have y'all ever seen a boil before? Not a lot of y'all have, but some of you have. I thought I heard 1 or 2 people say. A boil is like a raised section of flesh, and there's usually like a pus inside. Maybe you've seen it on TV. Would you mind getting the door for him? Thank you. It's extremely painful to have boils, and they start growing all around him. So he can't move even. So what he does so he can move is he is found at the end of Job, closer to the end of Job, with being next to a tree, sitting there in destroyed clothes. Boils are rising on him, so he takes broken pottery and scrapes away the boils. Thank you. It's a disgusting image, but he still holds firm to what he believes in. He still trusts God. He says that God is mighty. God is, he believes in him, and it's built there to kind of give you this idea you should hold firm to your belief. And the idea, of course, since it's from the Bible, is your belief in God, and you should trust something greater than yourself. So Faber, in our story, reads that book to Montag for the same reasons. Montag is beginning a new belief in books. He has this new passion. And so Faber wants to try to kind of increase that. So he is reading him the story of Job, something that you have to suffer a lot of times in order to grow through it. The end of Job, God, after the devil figures out he cannot win, God blesses him, like I think it says, threefold for what he had before. I don't know if that means he had 3 times as many children or 3 times as many wives. I don't know. Like that would be more of a headache, but who knows? But that's what it is. It's saying that you should hold firm to your faith and you should trust in something greater than yourself. Just like Montag now needs to hold into his new faith and trust that he and Faber can do something. So he is even pushing through that difficult time. That's where we're at with page 89. He has left Faber's house. He is now at home again. and he's with Mildred. All of a sudden, people are going to start coming over. Those women who wanted to come over and watch The White Clown tonight. Ugh. Clowns freak me out, so why would you want to watch that on TV? I don't know. Let's begin page 89. He was eating a light supper at 9 in the evening when the front door cried out in the hall, and Mildred ran from the parlor like a native, fleeing an eruption of Vesuvius. Vesuvius is a volcano that exploded and destroyed some parts of ancient Greece. Mrs. Phelps and Mrs. Bowles, I'm going to call her Mrs. Bowles, that sounds right, came through the front door and vanished into the volcano's mouth with martinis in their hands. Montag stopped eating. They were like a monstrous crystal chandelier tinkling in 1,000 chimes. He saw their Cheshire cat smiles burning through the walls of the house, and now they were screaming at each other above the din. Have you ever tried to talk to someone with music in their headphones, or like at a concert or something like that? You have to scream over it to hear sometimes. And that's what's happening. They have the TV up so loud, and they still want to talk. They are screaming above it, and how their voices are, it's like annoying tinkling of chandeliers. It's like bright and painful almost. And they had those fake smiles like a Cheshire cat, from Alice in Wonderland. I thought Macy in Wonderland for some reason. Alice in Wonderland. Montag found himself at the parlor door with his food still in his mouth. Doesn't everyone look nice? Nice. You look fine, Millie. Fine. Everyone looks swell. Swell. Montag stood watching them. So the whole time he has food in his mouth still, he's just like, what? Patience, whispered Faber. How could Faber talk to him? Right, because he has that, he calls it the green bullet. It's basically kind of like a seashell, but it's a little bit more hidden, and it's in his ear now, so they can talk to each other. We have that technology today. I shouldn't be here, whispered Montag, almost to himself. I should be back on my way to you with the money. Tomorrow's time enough. Careful. Isn't this show wonderful? Cried Mildred. Wonderful. On one wall, a woman smiled and drank orange juice simultaneously. How does she do both at once? Thought Montag insanely. In the other walls, an x-ray of the same woman revealed the contracting journey of the refreshing beverage on its way to her delighted stomach. That's the whole TV show. On one wall, you have a woman drinking orange juice and smiling. On the other wall, you have an x-ray, essentially, of the orange juice going down into her stomach. It's kind of weird. Why is that entertaining? Abruptly, the room took off on a rocket flight into the clouds. It plunged into a lime-green sea where blue fish ate red and yellow fish. A minute later, 3 white cartoon clowns chopped off each other's limbs to the accompaniment of immense incoming tides of laughter. 2 minutes more and the room whipped out of the town to the jet cars, wildly circling an arena, bashing and backing up and bashing each other again. Montag saw a number of bodies fly in the air. Millie, did you see that? I saw it. Montag reached inside the parlor wall and pulled the main switch. The images drained away as if the water had been let from a gigantic crystal bowl of hysterical fish. So did there seem to be any plot in that TV show? No, it was just like from one extreme to the other. They went from the woman to all of a sudden they looked like they were on a rocket shooting out, and they went into a sea where a bunch of fish were around, and then all of a sudden they switched to some cars bashing each other and bodies flying away from the cars. What? It seems like a crack dream almost. Not that Mr. Reynolds has ever had crack, all right? That you know. I mean, just joking. The 3 women turned slowly and looked with unconcealed irritation and then dislike at Montag. When do you suppose the war will start? He said. I notice your husbands aren't here tonight. So Montag is flipping the script here. He is going actively kind of attacking them with this type of conversation because it takes them out of their comfort, their bright colors and lights and sounds, to all of a sudden, let's get real here. Where are your husbands tonight? Are they dying in the war? What's going on? He's getting real here very quickly. Oh, they come and go, said Mrs. Phelps. And again, out again, then again. The army called Pete yesterday. He'll be back next week. The army said so. Quick war, 48 hours, they said, and everyone home. That's what the army said. Quick war. Pete was called yesterday, and they said he'd be back next week. Quick. She repeated herself there, see? But also, have any of y'all ever known someone in the military? A few? Okay, just a few of y'all. Do they come back in 1 week? No, all right? No. So, why is she just obviously believing this obvious lie here? Why is she believing this obvious lie? The three women fidgeted and looked nervously at the empty, mud-colored walls. The TV was turned off. I'm not worried, said Mrs. Phelps. I'll let Pete do all the worrying. She giggled. I'll let old Pete do all the worrying. Not me, I'm not worried. It's always someone else's husband dies, they say. I've heard that too. I've never known any dead man killed in a war. Killed jumping off buildings, yes, like Gloria's husband last week. But from wars, no. Not from wars, said Mrs. Phelps. Anyway, Pete and I always said, no tears, nothing like that. It's our third marriage each, and we're independent. Be independent, we always said. He said, if I get killed off, you just go right ahead and don't cry, but get married again, and don't thank me. I thought I hated Mildred. I thought I did, but these women are almost there. All right, they're swinging for the fences. So we see here the callousness that is normal for this type of society. How very self-centered they are. They are independent, is what she's saying. Really, they just don't care for anything around them. Wow, that's angry. That reminds me, said Mildred. Did you see that Clara Dove 5-minute romance last night in your wall? Well, it was all about this woman who. So Mildred is trying to change the subject. Let's go back to the fun. All right, let's gossip, girls. All right, about this love romance. But how long was the love romance story? 5 minutes. It's like The Bachelor on fast forward. Let's see who can fall in love in 5 minutes. You can't. Montague said nothing, but stood looking at the women's faces, as he had once looked at the face of saints in a strange church he had entered when he was a child. The faces of those enameled creatures meant nothing to him, though he talked to them and stood in that church for a long time, trying to be of that religion, trying to know what that religion was, trying to get enough of the raw incense and special dust of the place into his lungs and thus into his blood, to feel touched and concerned by the meeting of the colorful men and women with the porcelain eyes and the blood-ruby lips. But there was nothing. It was a stroll through another store, and his currency was strange and unusable there, and his passion cold. Even when he touched the wood and plaster and clay, so it was now, in his own parlor, with these women twisting in their chairs under his gaze, lighting cigarettes, blowing smoke, touching their sun-fired hair, and examining their blazing fingernails, as if they had caught fire from his look. Their faces grew haunted with silence. They leaned forward at the sound of Montague swallowing his final bite of food. They listened to his feverish breathing. The three empty walls of the room were like the pale brows of sleeping giants now, empty of dreams. Montague felt that if you touched these three staring brows, you would feel a fine salt sweat on your fingertips. The perspiration gathered from the silence, and the sub-audible trembling around and about and in the women who were burning with tension. Any moment they might hiss a long sputtering hiss and explode. Montague moved his lips. Let's talk. The women jerked and stared. So, this is where we get to the really big connection, really disconnection, between Montague and other people. This is where we see it. He does not connect to these women at all. He says, he even references it to like religion. He's been to a church before, and in some churches, especially in this in the 50s or so, you still had a lot of people were Catholic. And so you had pictures of saints and things like that on the walls or busts of them and things like that. He said he's been to one of those churches and he saw those things. But he didn't feel connected to them. They felt dead to him because he was looking at the buildings themselves. So he felt that disconnect. They didn't feel alive to him. And that's how he feels to these women. He feels like they're dead inside. And like they're like cold creatures, which is true because they are. The tension builds up in them as we go here. That starts off with, so it was now in his own parlor, the very top of the page, with these women twisting their chairs under his gaze, lighting cigarettes, blowing smoke, touching their sun-fired hair, and examining their blazing fingernails, as if they had caught fire from his look. So they're getting nervous. They're like, fidgeting around a little bit, swiveling some, one of them's lighting a cigarette and smoking. So maybe they might be touching their hair, waiting to see what he does, What's he going to do? They're nervous this whole time. That tension's building up in him. And he takes his time. He looks at the walls that he just turned off, and he thinks that, man, it's like they're so large, these walls, they're like a giant's eyebrow, right? They're so large. They're empty right now. They're not dreaming. That's what it's like. We know Ray Bradbury by now. He's kind of strange with those descriptions, but it is effective here. At any moment, they might hiss a long, sputtering hiss and explode. Montag moved his lips. Let's talk. The wind jerked and stared. How are your children, Mrs. Phelps? He asked. You know I haven't any. No one in his right mind, the good Lord knows, would have children, said Mrs. Phelps, not quite sure why she was angry with this man. I wouldn't say that, said Mrs. Bowles. I've had 2 children by cesarean section. No use going through all that agony for a baby. The world must reproduce, The race must go on. Besides, sometimes they look just like you, and that's nice. 2 cesareans turn the trick. Yes, sir. Oh, my doctor said cesareans aren't necessary. You've got the hips for it. Everything's normal, but I insisted. What's a cesarean section? A C-section, right? Now, a C-section is medically necessary many times. If there's an issue, it happens, all right? But what's happening here is, and especially something that we might not understand being in where we are 70 years in the future from this story being written. But back in the 50s, it was really common for women to insist on getting a C-section so they wouldn't have to go through any pain whatsoever. They would just be knocked out. They would actually, I learned this from my mom, they would get pampered up. They would put makeup on, do their hair. They would go to the hospital. They would take time after their water broke to get all pampered up. And then they would go to the hospital, get put to sleep. Not all the time, no. It takes so much time, yes. Yeah, a little bit extra, just a little bit. They would then go to the hospital, get knocked out, like with gas or whatever they did to knock you out, and then they would perform a C-section. So when you woke up, you're still so pretty for pictures, and you all of a sudden had a baby. Yeah. So now, while that wasn't everybody, but it apparently was rather common, and he is using that here to create the sense of, that's kind of strange, isn't it? And that's what we're seeing here. That these women don't care about the children themselves, their health at all. They just care about how do they feel. They don't want to feel anything. They insist on not feeling anything for these children. Now, cesareans are not. Children are ruinous. You're out of your mind, said Mrs. Phelps. Oh, I plunk the children in school 9 days out of 10. I put up with them when they come home 3 days a month. It's not bad at all. How many days do you go to school? 9 days out of 10? How many of y'all want to hang out with Mr. Reynolds for 9 days straight? Good, because I don't want to hang out with you either, all right? I'm too cool for y'all. Why are you laughing? Just somewhat hurtful. I put up with them when they come home 3 days a month. It's not bad at all. So she only sees them 3 days out of the whole month. That's it. It's a continuing that idea of, I don't care. You're just there to be like a trophy, essentially. To say, I've done my part having kids. My life is done. You lead them you heave them, like throw them, like throwing a small child, into the parlor and turn the switch. It's like washing clothes. Stuff laundry in and slam the lid. Mrs. Bowles tittered. They just as soon kick as kiss me. Thank God I can kick back. Anyone catching that? How many of y'all, when you throw a tantrum, your parent... Oh, I should probably ask that. All right. How many of y'all, when a child throws a tantrum, all right, if they, like, let's say, hit you, are you going to, as an adult, because most of you are almost adults, going to punch them back? No, you should not. They're children, all right? So you shouldn't. You should not act like a child to a child. That's just defeating the purpose here. But we see here, that's what she's doing. They just as soon kick as kiss me. Thank God I can kick them back. It's child abuse is what that is. There is something mentally wrong with this woman here. These women, I should say. And notice here, I've talked about before that Ray Bradbury is an amazing author, and we see it over and over again. I haven't really showcased each one, but notice this next line. The women showed their tongues laughing. So how did they laugh?
Mouths open.
Yeah, they laughed with their mouths completely open and like wide. I'm going to demonstrate it here. Feel free to laugh at me if you want to. Like, right? Like that. I felt really dumb just doing that. But they laughed, as it said, with their tongues, showing their tongues. So this is a great use of showing us what's happening instead of telling us what's happening. They didn't say they laughed loudly. That's kind of spoon-feeding it to us. No, they laughed with their tongues out. So it showcases to us exactly how they're laughing. It's a great use of words here. Mildred sat a moment, and then, seeing that Montag was still in the doorway, clapped her hands. Let's talk about politics. To please Guy. Because obviously he's not leaving, so he wants to talk about something serious. Let's talk about politics. That's dangerous to talk about today. Sounds fine, said Mrs. Bowles. I voted last election, same as everyone, and I laid it on the line for President Noble. I think he's one of the nicest looking men ever became president. Oh, but the man they ran against him, he wasn't much, was he? Kind of small and homely, and he didn't shave too close or comb his hair very well. What possessed the outs to run him? You just don't go running a little short man like that against a tall man. Besides, he mumbled half the time. I couldn't hear a word he said. And the words I did hear, I didn't understand. So why are they voting for Mr. Noble? Because he's tall and good looking. That's it. Do they care about what he says? No. They care, he looks good, I'm voting for him. All right? That's why I voted for Kanye. I'm just joking. So, the person they didn't vote for, the short guy called the Outs, he's a short guy. He's a little bit homely, a little bit of he's just a short guy, yeah. Running a little short man like that against a tall man. That's it. It's kind of a strange thing they didn't want to vote for him because they didn't understand him. He was apparently too smart for them, so they didn't like him. They wanted just a good-looking guy who just looked nice. Fat, too, and didn't dress to hide it. No wonder the landslide was for Winston Noble. Even their names help. Compare Winston Noble to Hubert Hogue for 10 seconds, and you can almost figure the results. Damn it, cried Montag. What do you know about Hogue and Noble? Why, they were right in that parlor wall not 6 months ago. One was always picking his nose. It drove me wild. Does she say which one? She doesn't. She just says one of them. So it might have been the good-looking guy picking his nose, just up there, digging in for gold. All right? The whole time. But she didn't care. She didn't care to remember which one, just about that it was happening. So she's going to say it's going to be the short, fat guy. That's it. Well, Mr. Montag, said Mrs. Phelps, do you want us to vote for a man like that? Mildred beamed. You just ran away from the door, Guy, and don't make me nervous. But Montag was gone and back in a moment with a book in his hand. Uh-oh. Remember yesterday I said pulling a book out here in this society is like pulling something very dangerous or highly illegal. Think like if, I've all of a sudden pulled like a machine gun out of nowhere or some type of drug or something like that out of nowhere. It'd be like, whoa, what's going on? Guy! Damn it all, damn it all, damn it! What have you got there? Isn't that a book? I thought all special training these days was done by film. Mrs. Phelps blinked. You're reading up on fireman theory? Theory, hell, said Montag. It's poetry. Montag, a whisper. Who's the whisper? Faber, thank you. Leave me alone. Montag felt himself turning in a great circling, roar and buzz and hum. Montag, hold on, don't. Did you hear them? Did you hear these monsters talking about monsters? Oh, God, the way they jabber about people and their own children and themselves, and the way they talk about their husbands, and the way they talk about war, damn it! I stand here and I can't believe it. I didn't say a single word about any war, I'll have you know, said Mrs. Phelps. Oh, as for poetry, I hate it, said Mrs. Phelps. Have you heard any? Montag, Faber's voice scraped it away at him. You'll ruin everything. Shut up, you fool. All three women were on their feet. Sit down! They sat. I'm going home, quavered Mrs. Bowles. Montag, please, in the name of God, what are you up to? Pleaded Faber. Why don't you just read us one of those poems from your little book? Mrs. Phelps nodded. I think that'd be very interesting. That's not right, wailed Mrs. Phelps. We can't do that. Well, look, if Mr. Montag he wants to, I know he does, and if we listen nice, Mr. Montag will be happy, then maybe we can go on and do something else. She glanced nervously at the long emptiness of the walls enclosing them. Montag, go through with this and I'll cut off. I'll leave. The beetle jabbed his ear. What good is this? What'll you prove? Scare hell out of them, that's what. Scare the living daylights out. Mildred looked at the empty air. Now, Guy, who are you talking to? A silver needle pierced his brain. Montag, listen, only one way out. Play it as a joke. Cover up, pretend you aren't mad at all. And then walk to your wall incinerator and throw the book in. Mildred had already anticipated this in a quavering voice. Ladies, once a year, every fireman's allowed to bring one book home from the old days to show his family how silly it all was, how nervous that sort of thing can make you, how crazy. Guys, surprise tonight is to read you one sample to show how mixed up things were, so none of us will ever have to bother our little old heads about that junk again. Isn't that right, darling? He crushed the book in his fists. Say yes. His mouth moved like Faber's. Yes. Mildred snatched the book with a laugh. Here, read this one. No, I take it back. Here's that real funny one you read out loud today. Ladies, you won't understand a word. It goes, ump. Go ahead, Guy. That page, dear. He looked at the open page. A fly stirred its wings softly in his ear. Read. What's that title, dear? Dover Beach. His mouth was numb. Now read in a nice clear voice and go slow. The room was blazing hot. He was all fire. He was all coldness. They sat in the middle of an empty desert with 3 chairs and him standing swaying and him waiting for Mrs. Phelps to stop straightening her dress, and Mrs. Bowles to take her fingers away from her hair. Then he began to read in a low, stumbling voice that grew firmer as he progressed from line to line. His voice went out across the desert into the whiteness and around the 3 sitting women there in the great hot emptiness. So this desert, he says they're in the hotness and coldness. He's described it before inside of himself, that he feels hot and cold at the same time. This is hyperbole, since he can't literally feel this way. But he feels like he's lost. He feels conflicted in so many ways. Like one part of him wants to do one thing, the other part wants to do something else. The empty desert, of course, are the empty walls, since they're in the TV parlor with all of them turned off. So that's the desert they're waiting. They're standing in right now. It's called Dover Beach. The Sea of Faith was once too at the full and round earth's shore, lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled, but now I only hear its melancholy long withdrawing roar, retreating to the breath of the night wind, down the vast edges, drear, and naked shingles of the world. The chairs creaked under the three women. Montag finished it out. Ah, love, let us be true to one another, for the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. And we are here as on a darkling plain, swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night. Mrs. Phelps was crying. The others, in the middle of the desert, watched her crying grow very loud as her face squeezed itself out of shape. They sat, not touching her, bewildered with her display. She sobbed uncontrollably. Montag himself was stunned and shaken. Shh, said Mildred. You're all right, Clara. Now, Clara, snap out of it. Clara, what's wrong? I, sobbed Mrs. Phelps. Don't know. I just don't know. Oh. Mrs. Bowles stood up and glared at Montag. You see, I knew it. That's what I wanted to prove. I knew it would happen. I've always said poetry and tears. Poetry and suicide and crying and awful feelings. Poetry and sickness, all that much. Now I've had to prove to me. You're nasty, Mr. Montag. You're nasty. Faber said, now. Montag felt himself turn and walk to the wall slot and drop the book in through the brass notch to the waiting flames. Silly words, silly awful hurting words, said Mrs. Bowles. What do people want to hurt people? Not enough hurt in the world. You have to tease people with stuff like that. Clara, now Clara, begged Mildred, pulling her arm. Come on, let's be cheery. You turn the family on now. Go ahead. Let's laugh and be happy now. Stop crying. We'll have a party. No, said Mrs. Bowles. I'm trotting right straight home. You want to visit my house and my family? Well and good. But I won't come in this fireman's crazy house again in my lifetime. Go home. Montag fixed his eyes upon her quietly. Go home and think of your first husband, divorced, and your second husband killed in a jet, and your third husband blowing his brains out. Go home and think of the dozen abortions you've had. Go home and think of that and your damn cesarean sections too, and your children who hate your guts. Go home and think of how it all happened. And what did you ever do to stop it? Go home. Go home, he yelled. Before I knock you down, I'd kick you out the door. Doors slammed and the house was empty. Montag stood alone in the winter weather with the parlor walls the color of dirty snow. In the bathroom, water ran. He heard Mildred shake the sleeping tablets into her hand. Why is that troublesome? Remember, she overdosed in the very beginning of the story. Fool, Montag, fool, oh God, you silly fool. Shut up! He pulled the green bullet from his ear and jammed it into his pocket. It sizzled faintly. Fool. He searched the house and found the books where Mildred had stacked them, behind the refrigerator. Some were missing, and he knew that she had started on her own slow process of dispersing the dynamite in her house, stick by stick. But he was not angry now, only exhausted and bewildered with himself. He carried the books into the backyard and hid them in the bushes near the alley fence. For tonight only, he thought, in case she decides to do any more burning. He went back to the house. Mildred? He called at the door of the darkened bedroom. There was no sound. Outside, crossing the lawn on his way to work, he tried not to see how completely dark and deserted Clarice McCullen's house was. That's where we're stopping today, ladies and gents, at page 98. I do want to briefly talk about Dover Beach, the Sea of Faith there, especially that last line. So that last line tells us a lot about what this poem is about. It says, let us be true to one another, For the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new. So while the world looks beautiful, looks amazing, looks ready for us, like we can conquer it if we want to, really, it hath really neither joy. The world does not bring you happiness. It does not bring you love. It does not bring you actual light or certitude or certainty about what to do. It doesn't give you peace. It doesn't help you with your pain at all. The world doesn't. And we, in this world, without anything, are on a darkling plain. A plain is a flat surface usually with very little tree cover or cover at all. And this plain that we're on is dark. It's swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night. In this dark place that we're at, in this world that we thought would be great, beautiful, amazing, it's not. Since we have no cover, we have nothing protecting us, we're just getting clashed over. It feels like we're having a constant war and battle. That's what that section means especially. And that touches Mrs. Phelps particularly hard. Because Mrs. Phelps, remember, her husband is fighting right now, is in the war. So that could be that connection that she has and that she is crying about. And we see that with the next one, Mrs. Bowles, she is not feeling it. She's trying to hold herself above any feeling. So Montag yells at her, go think about these things that you struggle with that are of the world, like your husbands, your children, your abortion, things like that, the dozen abortions you've had, all of those. That's what she's saying that you need to focus on. Realize that you are not good. That's what he's trying to tell her. It's a dark time. It's something that they are shaking from. And they, of course, run out of the house. Well, he throws them out of the house, essentially. And he is just tired. And he just goes to work. That's where we're leaving it for today. Online, we have a little bit of work I would like you to complete when it comes to the writing prompt. That's it, that writing prompt today. I'm going to show you again how you can use the writing prompt itself to create your first starter sentence to help you out. But that is all we're doing for today. All right.